Welcome back, everyone. You've really outdone yourselves this time. You've sent over a mountain of research, a mountain, all about, well, brain-body physiology. And, wow, it's fascinating.
That's great to hear. I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. We've got brain-body physiology, local reflex and central communication, catchy, right?
Very concise.
And a ton of other articles and studies all about how our brains and bodies, well, how they talk to each other. I mean, really, it looks like you're especially curious about the brain and the immune system, like how they connect.
Yeah, that's definitely a hot topic right now. And for good reason.
Okay, so let's
Yeah.
unpack this. What do you think is the most interesting thing here?
Well, I think what's really capturing everyone's attention is that for so long, we've kind of viewed the body as, well, separate systems, right?
Right, like the heart's over here doing its thing.
Yeah, and the immune system's off doing its own thing over there. All this new research is basically shouting, hold on a second, folks, it's all connected.
Yeah.
And the brain, well, the brain's the conductor. It's the ultimate maestro of this crazy orchestra we call the human body.
I love that. The brain is the conductor.
It's a pretty good analogy, right?
It is. So, okay, if the brain is calling the shots, it must be getting some pretty detailed reports from the rest of the body.
And it does, yeah.
So how does it even know? Like, what's going on down there?
Ah, the million-dollar question. So basically, there are two main ways information travels from the body to the brain. First, we've got those soluble molecules.
Soluble molecules.
Yeah, things like hormones, and cytokines.
Cytokines.
Those are like the immune system's messengers. They travel through the bloodstream and, well, they basically slip into specific brain areas. These areas are called circumventricular organs.
Circumventricular.
Or CVOs for short. They're like, I guess you could think of them like VIP lounges in the brain.
VIP lounges.
Yeah, because they have less restrictive access, you see. It lets those molecules, those hormones and cytokines, deliver their status updates directly to the brain.
Directly to the brain. Fascinating.
One example, and everyone's experienced this, is the area postrema.
The area what now?
The area postrema, it's one of those CVOs, and it gets triggered by cytokines.
Okay.
And let's just say, that's why you feel nauseous when you're sick.
So my gut feeling about being sick is actually my brain getting a memo from my immune system.
Exactly. It's a direct line.
Wow. Okay, what about the other way information gets to the brain?
Right. So the second lane on that information highway is the sensory neurons.
Okay.
These are like direct lines from all sorts of organs straight to the brain.
Direct lines.
And one of the superstars here is the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve. I've heard of that.
It's a major player. Carries signals from the gut, heart, lungs, you name it.
Wow. It's like a superhighway for body-brain communication.
Exactly. But it gets even more interesting because we also have sensory neurons coming from the dorsal root ganglia.
Yeah.
Dorsal root ganglia, they're called DRGs. And these DRGs send reports about what's going on in the internal organs.
So like what? Internal spies for the brain.
In a way, yeah. And the thing is, we actually know surprisingly little about them.
Really?
They've been kind of understudied. So we're only beginning to understand, the full scope of the messages that they're sending.
So there are still some mysteries about how the brain gets its intel.
Oh, definitely. Tons of them.
But once the brain has this information, what does it do with it? It's not just passively listening, right?
Oh, absolutely not. The brain's a doer, not just a listener.
A doer.
It has a few different ways of sending instructions back down to the body.
Okay.
One way is the endocrine system. That's all about hormones. They travel through the bloodstream,
Right.
kind of leisurely, slower than neurons. But their effects are more widespread.
Okay, so the endocrine system, that's for those messages that need to get to a lot of places but maybe aren't super urgent.
Exactly. Then there's the somatic nervous system, which controls our movements.
Our movement.
Like all the voluntary stuff.
Right, so like how I'm like waving my hands around right now.
Exactly. That's the somatic nervous system in action.
But what about those things I don't consciously control?
Like what?
Like my heartbeat or my digestion.
That's where the autonomic nervous system comes in.
The autonomic nervous system.
Yeah, that's the real star of our show today. And it's divided into two branches.
Two branches.
The sympathetic and the parasympathetic.
Wait, are those the
fight or flight and rest and digest systems, you mean?
Yeah, those classic examples of how our bodies react, when we're stressed out or relaxed.
Exactly. But, and here's the thing, it's not as simple as one being on and the other being off.
Oh.
Yeah, they're actually more like, they're more like expert dancers.
Dancers.
They're constantly coordinating with each other, you see, to maintain this perfect balance.
That's homeostasis, right?
Exactly. Homeostasis.
So more of like a carefully choreographed tango.
Uh-huh. Yes. More tango than wrestling match.
I like that. So can you give me an example? Like, how does this elegant dance actually play out?
Sure. Imagine your blood pressure changes.
Okay.
Specialized sensory neurons, called baroreceptors, they pick up on that change instantly, and they immediately send a signal up to the brain.
To the brain.
And the brain then directs the parasympathetic system to, say, slow down the heart rate.
Okay.
And at the same time, it tells the sympathetic system to, well, to kind of chill out on its pedal to the metal approach.
Wow. So even when things are changing, these two systems are always working together, like behind the scenes, to keep everything stable.
Exactly. And actually, recent research using this technique called single-cell RNA sequencing has been, well, it's been blowing the doors wide open on just how complex these systems really are.
What do you mean?
We're finding that there's this incredible diversity of neurons within each system, like way more than we ever thought.
So what does that mean?
It suggests that their control, over all these processes, it's far more nuanced than just an on-off switch. It's like discovering they have this whole secret language they've been speaking all along.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
There's so much more going on than we ever realized. But it's not just the brain sending commands, right?
Nope.
The body's talking back too, isn't it?
You got it. It's a two-way conversation, a constant feedback loop.
I see.
We can actually think of brain-body communication as happening on, like, 3 different levels.
3 levels.
Yeah. So first you have local control.
Local control.
This is where sensory neurons can actually release their own signaling molecules right there on the spot.
Right on the spot.
Yeah, creating like these localized effects.
Right.
So for example, in the immune system, you've got these sensory neurons that can actually detect
Pathogens.
or inflammation. And then they can release neuropeptides that they either enhance or suppress the local immune response right there.
So it's like these neurons have some authority to make decisions on their own.
Sort of, yeah.
But why would they do that? I mean, if immune cells themselves can already release similar signals, why are the neurons doing it too?
That is a great question. And it really highlights how much we still don't know.
It's like there's this whole other layer of control happening, and we're just starting to get a glimpse of it.
Exactly.
I'm loving these mysteries. Okay, so local control, that's level 1. What about level 2?
Level 2 is reflex control.
Reflex control.
Yeah, this is like your classic stimulus response loop.
Okay.
But often it's a lot more complex than, a simple knee-jerk reflex.
Right.
A perfect example is the inflammatory reflex.
The inflammatory reflex.
Yeah. This reflex is actually crucial for keeping the immune system in check.
Keeping the immune system in check. How so?
Well, imagine your body senses inflammation.
Okay.
Boom sensory neurons send an urgent message straight to the brainstem.
The brainstem.
Specifically to a part called the nucleus of the solitary tract, the NTS.
The NTS.
Yep, and the NTS, well, it activates the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve again. That nerve does everything.
It really does. And the vagus nerve then talks to the spleen, which sets off this whole cascade of events that ultimately they suppress those inflammatory cytokines.
Wow. So the vagus nerve is like a peacemaker for the immune system.
You could say that, yeah. It helps keep things from getting out of control. And what's really remarkable is the speed of it all.
Speed.
Yeah, this neuronal response is lightning fast compared to the slower chemical signaling that the immune system usually uses.
So it's like having this specialized emergency response team ready to go at a moment's notice.
Exactly. And in some situations, like, say, sepsis.
Sepsis.
Yeah, that speed can be the difference between life and death.
Wow. Okay, I'm ready for level 3. What's central control all about?
Central control is where things get really interesting. This is where the higher brain areas come in.
The higher brain areas.
Yeah, like the cortex. They're the big bosses. And this is where things go way beyond simple reflexes.
Okay, so it's not just about reacting to what's happening right now.
Right. It's about planning, anticipating, making decisions based on everything, past experiences, emotions, the whole shebang.
Wow, so it's like the brain is playing chess, not checkers.
Exactly. And when it comes to the immune system, this is where we get to this really cool concept called immunoception.
Immunoception, what in the world is that?
It's how the brain represents, maps out the state of the immune system.
Okay.
It's not just about, being aware that you feel sick.
Right.
It's a much more dynamic system.
Dynamic.
It actually allows the brain to, get this, to predict and even influence immune responses.
To predict.
Yeah, like before things even get out of hand. It's almost like having an internal weather forecast, but for your immune system.
Wait, so my brain isn't just reacting to infections. It's trying to stay ahead of them.
Exactly. It's pretty incredible.
That is amazing. So what part of the brain is in charge of all this immunoception magic?
Well, the insular cortex.
The insular cortex.
It's also called the IC, and it plays a major role.
Okay.
This part of the brain is all about processing all those bodily sensations and emotions.
Right.
And get this, studies showed that the IC can actually store immunological memories.
Immunological memories. What does that even mean?
It means it can recall, like, specific immune states, like what it felt like to have the flu last year.
So even though I'm healthy right now.
Right. Your brain remembers what it felt like to be sick.
That's so weird. But why? What's the point of remembering how crummy you felt?
Well, it could be why we have things like, conditioned immune responses.
Conditioned immune responses.
Like, say there's a food that made you sick once.
Okay.
The next time you see that food, you might feel nauseous just looking at it.
Oh, yeah. I know that feeling.
That's your brain, thanks to the IC, anticipating a repeat performance. It's like a once bitten, twice shy response, but for your immune system.
That's wild. So my gut feeling about that food is actually like my brain's immunological memory.
Exactly. It's fascinating how it all ties together, right?
This is blowing my mind. But it makes me wonder.
What?
If my brain can learn to be cautious from past immune battles, could it also use those memories to boost my resilience in the future?
Now, that is a fascinating question. And while the research you sent didn't directly address that, it's definitely something worth thinking about.
Yeah, I mean, if the brain can remember all the bad stuff, why not the good stuff too?
Right. If it can learn to be cautious, why not learn to be resilient?
I love that thought. What if we could tap into those positive immune memories? Like, could we train our brains to be more resilient, to be better prepared for whatever comes our way?
Well, those are questions for another deep dive.
Okay, fair enough. But wow, this whole idea of immunoception, it's incredible. Like, it's making me see my own health in a completely different light. It's not just about what I eat or how much I exercise.
Yep.
It's about all this incredible stuff happening inside me all the time.
It's a whole new way of thinking about things, isn't it?
It really is. And I think we just scratched the surface.
Oh, definitely.
There's so much more to explore. Like, how does stress affect all of this?
Oh, that's a big one.
And what about those mind-body practices like yoga and meditation? Do they really make a difference at this level?
And what about all those diseases that have a strong immune component?
Right. Like, could we actually retrain the brain to manage those conditions?
So many questions.
So many questions. But I think we need to take a deep breath, let all this incredible information sink in.
Yes, definitely.
And we'll be back in a flash to tackle all those big questions.
Sounds good. Before we went to that deep breath there, you were talking about the brain, remembering those positive immune experiences.
Oh, yeah. Could it use those memories to, help us be more resilient in the future?
Right. That's a question that really gets to the heart of this whole brain-body connection.
It's just, I don't know, mind-boggling, this whole idea that my brain is basically mapping my immune system.
It is pretty amazing.
Predicting threats, storing memories. It's like something out of science fiction.
I know, but it's happening inside us all the time, and it's not just a one-way street either.
Right. It's like a constant dialogue.
Exactly. This constant back and forth between the brain and the immune system and every other system in the body, too.
So we talked about those 3 levels of control, right?
Local, reflex, and central.
Yeah, those. It's like having local officials, emergency response teams, and the CEO all working together to keep the body running smoothly.
That's a good analogy.
But can you give me a real-world example of how this all works together? Like, what happens in my body when I'm about to eat something I know my stomach's not going to be happy with?
Oh, that's a good one. The dreaded food sensitivity dilemma. Okay, picture this. You're staring at this delicious dish.
Okay.
Deep down, that it might not love you back.
Right.
But it looks so good. So what happens? Your brain, thanks to those immunological memories we were talking about, it's already on high alert. Oh, yeah. It starts sending signals down to your gut, preemptively adjusting blood flow and immune cell activity. Like it's saying, okay, team, we've been here before. Let's prepare for trouble.
So my brain is basically calling in reinforcements before I've even taken a bite.
Exactly. Like it's getting your gut ready for battle.
That's so cool. But what if, despite the brain's best efforts,
Yeah.
I end up with an upset stomach anyway. What happens then?
Well, if things go south, those rapid response reflexes kick in.
Like the inflammatory reflex.
Right. The vagus nerve steps up, starts calming down inflammation, trying to limit the damage. It's a well-oiled machine.
But what about the insular cortex? The keeper of all those immune memories. What's it doing during all this?
The IC. Oh, it's busy taking notes.
Taking notes.
It's linking that specific food to the immune response, basically creating this detailed record for future reference.
So next time that dish tempts me,
Yep.
my IC might send up a red flag.
Exactly. It might trigger like a stronger anticipatory response. Maybe you'll feel a wave of nausea or just get this, gut feeling.
Literally a gut feeling.
It says, nope, not worth it.
It's like my brain is learning, from experience, like developing this taste aversion to protect me.
That's a great way to put it. It really shows how connected our senses, emotions, and immune responses really are.
It really does. It makes you think about all those things we do instinctively, all those decisions we make based on gut feelings. And it's like,
What?
maybe it's actually the IC whispering its wisdom.
Maybe so. We are constantly getting these signals from our bodies.
Yeah.
And the brain is always interpreting them, shaping our behavior in ways we're not even aware of. It's kind of humbling, when you think about it.
It really is. And it makes me wonder, like, if the brain is so involved in all of this, what does that mean for those diseases where the immune system is, really a major player?
That's a question a lot of researchers are trying to answer right now.
Could understanding this connection, lead to new treatments?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, if we can figure out exactly how the brain influences immune responses, in different situations, then we might be able to develop therapies that target those specific neural pathways.
So, instead of just treating the symptoms, we could actually address the root of the problem.
Exactly.
Could we, retrain the brain to manage chronic inflammation or even, allergies? Is that even possible?
Well, that's definitely a goal. And there's some promising research going on in that area. Some researchers are exploring things like biofeedback and mindfulness.
Oh, interesting.
The idea is to help people gain, more conscious control over their autonomic nervous system.
So instead of always being ruled by our fight or flight response, we could learn to, dial up the rest and digest system. We're taking the wheel and steering our own physiological responses.
Exactly. And there's also a lot of excitement around vagus nerve stimulation.
Vagus nerve stimulation.
Yeah, or VNS. It's already being used to treat epilepsy.
I've heard of that.
But now researchers are looking at its potential for a whole range of other conditions too.
Like what?
Like depression, inflammatory bowel disease, even rheumatoid arthritis.
Wow. So we could potentially tap into those powerful anti-inflammatory reflexes just by directly stimulating the vagus nerve.
That's the hope. But it's still early days. We need more research to figure out how to, fine-tune VNS for different conditions.
Right, make sure it's safe and effective.
Exactly. But it's definitely a promising avenue.
It really highlights just how powerful this research could be. The more we learn about this communication between the brain and the body, the more possibilities open up.
Absolutely. And it's not just about these, high-tech interventions.
What do you mean?
Think about all those mind-body practices that have been around for centuries.
Yoga.
Yoga, meditation, acupuncture. Could they be working, at least in part, by influencing these very pathways we've been talking about?
It makes you wonder, these practices that were once kind of dismissed as alternative are now starting to gain more scientific credibility.
I think so. As we learn more about their effects on the nervous system, the immune system, even on gene expression.
Yeah.
It's like we're starting to rediscover the wisdom in these ancient traditions. And as we learn more about how the brain and body communicate, we might be able to integrate these practices more effectively into modern medicine.
That would be amazing.
Yeah,
it's such an exciting time to be exploring all these connections.
It really is.
This deep dive has been incredible so far. Truly one of our most fascinating yet. But we're not done yet. There's still so much to unpack, We need to talk more about stress.
Yes, definitely. Stress is huge.
And what about those mind-body practices? Do they really work?
And let's not forget all those diseases that have a strong immune component.
Right. Could we actually retrain the brain to manage those conditions?
So many big questions.
I know. So many questions. But for now, let's take another deep breath, gather our thoughts.
Sounds good.
And we'll be back in a flash to wrap up this amazing exploration. Okay, I think I've caught my breath. That last discussion, wow. It was a lot to take in, but really eye-opening. I'm like seriously looking at my own health in a whole new way.
It is a shift in perspective.
It's not just about, what I eat or how much I exercise. It's about this whole, like, incredible interplay happening inside me all the time.
It really is. And the implications are, well, they're pretty huge.
Absolutely. I mean, we talked about potential treatments for all sorts of diseases, but
Yeah.
what about just feeling good? Like every day, does this research tell us anything about how to stay healthy, not just, how to treat diseases?
Oh, for sure. I think understanding this connection really underscores the importance of of a holistic approach to health. It's not just about treating individual organs, in isolation.
Right. Like it's not just about going to the cardiologist for your heart and the gastroenterologist for your gut and so on.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that everything's connected.
So it's about taking care of the whole system, mind, body, everything.
You got it.
So that means managing stress,
Huge one.
getting enough sleep,
Absolutely.
cultivating positive emotions.
All these things contribute to that balance, that delicate balance between the brain and the body.
Because if we neglect one area,
Yeah.
well, it can throw everything off.
It really can, like a ripple effect.
It's like that old saying, you are what you eat. But it's bigger than that.
It is, yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like you are everything you do, think, and feel.
I like that. Our health is truly a reflection of that intricate dance between all these different factors.
That's beautiful. It makes me feel like we have so much more power over our own well-being.
We do. We really do.
Okay, before we wrap things up,
Yeah.
there's one question that keeps coming back to me.
Okay.
We talked about how the brain, remembers those negative immune experiences.
Right, like your food nemesis.
Haha, exactly. But could it also store memories of the good stuff? Immunologically speaking, that is.
Oh, interesting.
Like, when my immune system successfully fought off a cold or the flu,
Yeah.
could my brain use that memory, like, to boost my resilience the next time I'm exposed to a bug?
Hmm. That is such a fantastic question. I'm not sure if the research has looked at that specifically. Yeah, it's not something that was explicitly addressed in the articles you sent, at least.
Uh-huh.
But it's definitely a tantalizing possibility. I mean, if the brain can learn to be cautious from the bad stuff, why not learn to be, resilient from the good stuff?
Right. It just makes sense. What if we could tap into those positive immune memories?
That would be incredible.
Imagine if we could, like, train our brains to be more resilient, to be ready for anything.
That's a great goal. And it really highlights how much we still have to learn about this whole brain-body connection.
It does. This whole deep dive has been mind-blowing. Truly one of our most fascinating explorations yet.
I agree. I've enjoyed it immensely.
Well, the research you shared, it's just, wow, cutting edge. And honestly, your insights have been so helpful in navigating all of this.
My pleasure.
I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what it even means to be healthy.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, this is just the beginning. The journey of discovery, well, it never really ends.
That's so true. There's always more to learn.
Exactly. More connections to make, more mysteries to unravel about this amazing system we call the human body.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
And to all of you listening out there, thank you so much for joining us on this incredible journey.
Yes, thank you.
Keep those questions coming. And we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of everything.